Welcome to episode 4 of the Property Hustle podcast. And in today's episode, I would like us to talk about why good agents find it very, very difficult, to thrive, to survive in the rental market in Nigeria. Discussions around agents and agency and whatnot are not held, they are not, the case around agency is not being discussed enough. Because, for instance, if you see any of these public forums, any of these seminars, any of these, the housing shows and all of these things that are being held, nobody talks about the agent. Everything that people are focused on is around how they can buy a house and how they can sell a house. That is what the discussions are around. And in fact, the thing around housing, it doesn't start and end on building the houses. In fact, the chunk of the whole thing, right, it revolves around rentals. Because if a house is built and is not occupied, what is the purpose? So even if I'm going to now talk about buying the buying the house, buying the property, or selling the property, somebody has to live inside it. And as an individual, right, if I buy a property and tomorrow I'm going to buy another one, I cannot live in two houses at the same time. You understand? And there are lots of people that have 10 houses, 20 houses, and even more, right? So at the end of the day, they need people to manage these houses for them. They need people to be able to get somebody into these houses. But what I've observed is in every discussions around housing, the agents are left out. And so I think it's high time we have more discussions around agents. We have more discussions around it because it's another part of the market that is completely overlooked by a lot of people, and even the people in there themselves, they overlook it. But it's big. You understand? It's a very, very big market because there's no houses without rentals. And the people that coordinate these rentals, that coordinate that, facilitate these rentals are the agents. Ideally. Because it's hard for you to just walk into a house and say, okay, I'm renting this house and, they pay you. And in fact, these days you realize that even when you are able to walk into a house like that, right, and you say you want to pay, even the landlord, they are also collecting agency fee and legal fee and all these things. In previous episode, I talked about the mismatch between the type of houses that are provided and the type of houses that are available. The agents have a role to play in this because they have a first-hand information on the type of accommodation that the people need. You understand? But now, if the agents are not carried along from the very beginning, how are they now going to contribute to tell the people that are building these houses, to tell the developers, the private investors, and everybody that is building houses? How are they going to be able to communicate to them that actually what the market needs is not duplex? So actually what the market needs is not a 4-bedroom bungalows and all those luxurious homes that are being built. They are able to say what the market needs actually is those houses, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, something that the regular people can rent, self-contains. You understand? So you see that the agents have a role, but they are not being carried along. And I think this is something we are going to be doing, right? This is something we are going to look at. We are going to have to have like a situation whereby the agents, are put at the forefront of this whole housing discussion. And so in this episode, I want to talk about the agents because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, the agents are a key component of the housing mix. Because if a tenant wants to rent an accommodation today, the person he meets is the agent. If a tenant rents an accommodation and something is wrong with the accommodation, the first person that comes to the tenant's mind is the agent. If a landlord builds a house today and he wants to rent it out, the first person that comes to his mind is the agent. For instance, if the landlord has built a house, the landlord is going to tell the agent that he wants the house to be rented immediately. You understand? Because at the end of the day, this landlord has already spent a lot of money to build a house. So the only thing that matters to the landlord at that point in time is he just wants the house to be done, as in to be taken, so that he can begin to recoup his investment. And so the landlord is putting the pressure on the agent. He's telling the agent, I want this house to be rented. So it's kind of an ultimatum given to the agent. You understand? And so beside that one, the landlord maybe has already fixed the price. and he expects the agent to be able to bring the tenants that will pay that price. You understand? Although I listened to some conversations, right, on radio, I think, where somebody, a presenter, was kind of blaming the agent of how there was a house and the landlord says he was taking 2 million and of which is cheaper than the market rate, and that the agent was saying he has to collect, I mean, he's bringing somebody that's paying 4.5 and all of that. And the blame is going to the agent already, that it is the agent that is marking up this cost. It is the agent that is influencing or that is coercing the landlord to collect the money. But when you now look at it, you see that in some situation, the landlord stand his ground. The landlord says, okay, this is what I want to collect. And so the agent has no right to impose any cost on the landlord. Because now, for that kind of house now that, it's 2 million naira, that the landlord wants, and the agent says he's bringing 4 million, the landlord can easily just say, no, that's not what I want. I want 2 million naira. And there are lots of landlords, even in Abuja, that does that. That they have a certain rate, even though the next compound, the next house is giving out times two of that rate. That is their own rate. They are comfortable with it, and so there's that pressure coming from the landlord in terms of the cost. Like, okay, this is how much I want to rent it. So most of the landlords, they are not giving this easy price that some of us want to blame the agents for. You understand? They give the high price, and so the agents now have the responsibility to make sure that it brings a tenant that is going to be able to rent the accommodation. You understand my point? So there's that pressure coming from the landlord. Because if you now, like, if you that I mean you are the agent and you have this opportunity to now bring a tenant to pay a certain amount of money or to pay within a certain period of time and you're not able to, the landlord is going to consider you as a failure. The landlord is going to consider you as incompetent. You understand? And so the next thing is the landlord gets another agent, right? You are out of the picture. And so that is where the pressure comes from. It's not that the landlord is, putting, like, there's a hammer or there's something that the landlord is hitting the agent with and all of that he must bring somebody. So there's that pressure coming from the landlord, and then you now have pressure coming from the tenants also. You understand? Because the tenants wants a certain type of house. The tenant wants it in a certain kind of location. The tenant wants that certain kind of location at a certain price. And all these things are the responsibility of the agent to get them out. And if you as the agent you're not able to get it, the tenant gets another person. The tenant consider you incompetent, unable to provide what they need. You understand? And so there's a lot of issues that the agents have that we are not talking about If we're even talking about why the good agents find it difficult, part of the thing to talk about is the bad agents too. Because even as we talk about the sharp practices that exist in the rental space, with agency, the bad image, the bad reputation that the agency has, the real estate agents has got, you see that it is not all of them. There are good ones, but now the bad eggs, which happens to be few of them, have now destroyed the reputation of the general population of the good ones. So the good ones are now classed in the same category. You understand? They are put in the same mold, right? All agents are bad. You understand? The tenants are blaming the agents of how, the cost of housing is increasing, the agents are at fault. You get? The tenants, they are blaming the agents of how maybe it took them to a place that is not good for them. There are lots of things. And in fact, being a property agent, right, is among a profession that most of the people that are in it are not able to categorically, proudly say, I'm a property agent in Nigeria. You understand? Like, for instance, if you have a daughter, like you are a father and you have a daughter, or you are a parent and you have a daughter that is getting married, and they ask you, and you ask your daughter, what is your husband to be? What is his profession? And the daughter says, he's an agent, he's a property agent. I can bet you majority of the parents are going to begin to have double mind. They are going to begin to think, come on, is this okay? Right? Especially rental agents. If I even the agents that deal in selling properties and all of that, it's all the same. there's a bad reputation in the industry already. That a lot of times people are not, they are not very, very, confident of the profession. And beside the confidence, they live in. Most agents, they barely survive. And so this kind of breeds sharp practices among the bad ones, not the good ones. And so now the people that now suffer more in this whole mix are now the good ones, because the bad ones, with their sharp practices, they're able to, cut some corners and, keep surviving and all that. So the good ones that just want to do the business ethically, right? They have a landlord that have a property that wants to rent out, and they want a tenant to come into the property. The landlord says, my property is 2 million naira, and the agent tells the tenant the property is 2 million naira, then you pay me my fee and all of that. Sincerely, those ones that are able to do that, those are the ones that are suffering. Now, there are those categories of the agents that the landlord tells them the property is 2 million naira, and they tell the tenant is 4 million naira, which even the people that blame the agents that, they contribute in increasing the cost of housing, they are right in some regard because of the bad agents. So how are the good agents faring? The agency markets, the agents in Nigeria, there's no regulation, which is what I said from the beginning. They are not regulated. You understand? And so, because of that lack of regulation, you see that there are lots of different categories of people coming into the market. Even people that don't know anything around agency, they are in the market. You understand? They are also agents. And that is where you have those sharp practices and all of that. But there's another angle to the whole mix of whether an agent is supposed to manage a property or it has to be a legal practitioner. Now, first of all, the question is, what do you mean by, managing the property? You understand? What do you mean by managing the property? Managing the property, to me, as in what I feel, is about, managing the tenants. Because a lot of times when we say property management, we say people are managing properties. The thoughts now cycles around, the lawyers, the people that, are dedicated property managers, facility managers and all that. But what does it really entail? You've brought a tenant to rent the property. Now, the management is about, okay, if anything goes wrong with the property, the tenant reports. Maybe as the agent or as the person that brought the tenant, you are aware of the problem. Whether there's, for instance, there's a door that is having problem, or maybe there's a leaky faucet, or there's something, any of those major maintenance that are within the purview of the landlord, or what the landlord are supposed to be responsible for. Now, the agent maybe is communicated that, okay, this is the problem. And the agent, because the agent already have this relationship with the landlord, the agent is able to communicate it to the landlord, right? And then they're able to together fix the problem. That, to me, I think is management. So when we talk about property management, the agents can, conveniently, and competently manage a property. Because to me, I don't think there's anything real, in that is so difficult for the agents to do. Because the agent can communicate with the landlord, the agent can communicate with the tenant. Once the agents are able to have good relationship, long-lasting relationships with the landlords, this whole thing becomes easy. So that is when the agents are able to take their own position in the market. But now, in terms of the property management that we're talking about, the lawyers, the barristers, and all of that, having like a seal on the legal agreement, the tenancy agreement, and all that, that is something that can be done even without the agent being a legal practitioner. You understand? Because now an agent can have like a lawyer. Because this is not something that is so difficult. It's not rocket science. You understand? It's agreement. Because in fact, there's a question I've been asking, right? What is the legal fee that is part of the component of the rent? What is it for? You understand my point? What is it for? I've asked different people. Somebody will tell me it's for legal documentation, which goes around that tenancy agreement and all of that. And other people will tell me that it is so that if there is any problem in the future, you understand, between the landlord and the tenant, that the lawyer can come and represent. So, which means the tenant is the person paying for the legal representation. That is for the lawyer that is representing the landlord. That is, it's kind of, I'm paying you to fight me. You understand? So I keep asking that question. What is really the legal fee component of this dimension? And so if it is about the legal documentation, that can be done even by the agent. You understand? It's just like let's say in the design industry, in the engineering field now, you can be an engineer, you can be a design engineer, and you maybe you are not current certified yet. You understand? And so you've done a design, and you know this design very well. You've done a design. The law provides that you can present that design. You understand? But you are not going to be able to present it under your name as like this certifying authority. You get, but you are going to still be able to kind of to provide or to present that drawing under the name of the certified professional. You understand? So you are an engineer, you are not certified, and I do the design. You do the design, you bring it to me. I review it, and then I can certify that yeah, this design is okay, right? So the same thing can apply to the agency space, whereby the agents can have like those ones that are maybe lawyers if those legal stuff are needed. That this those people can certify those things, and everything goes. Because at the end of the day, you see that when an agent brings a tenant, it's easier for the agent to kind of interact with the tenant, know so many things about the tenant. You understand? And so it's easier for the agent to manage the tenant than for any other third party that maybe have office somewhere to manage this tenant. You understand? So that is something that these are some of the opportunities that exist for the agent, but that I've seen that they are not kind of forthcoming in taking advantage of those opportunities. So I think the agents need to stand up. They need to take responsibility. They need to take charge of their profession. Because if they don't do it, if you don't do it, there's nobody else that is going to come and do it for you. You understand? With that, I think we've come to the end of episode 4, and I'll implore you to subscribe to our channel and follow our pages, and let's keep the conversation going. And I'll see you on the next one.